All right, I'm Ray Reinhardt's Chaos Astrologer. If you're new to my videos or my channel on YouTube as well, my goal with my lectures, especially this one, is to educate those studying astrology on how to recognize and decipher transit events, as well as elaborate on my predictions, my perspectives on what the chart looks like. This is a presentation highlighting the mundane trends and themes for 2019 overall year. The themes are primarily sociological, somewhat political. I don't get into politics per se, but the associations with Pluto and authorities and governments is mentioned. So for those interested in my future prediction lectures for the seasons, like Aquarius season, Pisces season, etc., I already have those all mapped out throughout 2019 and beyond. Please subscribe to my Ray Reinhardt's Chaos Astrologer YouTube channel or follow my blog at rayreinhardts.blog. So this is my transit talk mundane overview. It's just going over the exact chart at the moment when it hit midnight, the 1st of January. So here's the chart. I'll just let you take a look at it for a second. So just if you're not familiar with some of the actual symbols, if we look in the first house, we have Palace in Libra. Then we have a stellium here in Scorpio, the Moon, Ceres, and Venus. Then we look here in the third house, we have Jupiter, Mercury, and Vulcan. And in the fourth house, we have the IC, because I'm using equal houses. The Sun, Saturn, Pluto, and the South Node. The fifth house, we have Vesta and Black Moon Lilith. The sixth house, we have Neptune, Chiron, Hygeia, and Mars that just went into Aries. In the seventh house, we have the Polar Ascendant, Eris, and Uranus. In the eighth house, we have Juno. Ninth house is empty. On the midheaven, we have a stellium with Hades, the Earth symbol, as well as the North Node in Cancer. In the 11th house, we have the trans-Pluto aspect, and there's nothing in the 11th house. So remnant transit themes for 2018. It's important to look at past, present, and future. So the 3rd, 6th, 9th, and 12th house are past houses. Those represent how the past events impact the present moment. So let's dissect these one at a time. You saw the chart as previous. We're going to go ahead and discuss that. Third house has a stellium with Jupiter at 11 degrees of Sagittarius, Mercury 24 degrees of Sagittarius, and Vulcan at 3 degrees of Capricorn. The stellium represents a grandiose, optimistic perspective or exaggerated outlook. It's about discussions about foreign affairs, travel concerns, and the beliefs and perspectives with ongoing events that fit these themes. The sixth house also has a stellium with Neptune at 14 degrees of Pisces, Chiron at 28 degrees of Pisces, and Hygeia at 29 degrees of Pisces. And lastly, we have Mars at 0 degrees of Aries that just happened on the 1st. This stellium has a huge emphasis on health and well-being. With Mars entering Aries on this day in the 6th house signifies the ramping up of an aggressive flu season. Highlighting aspects from the 3rd house stellium to the 6th also translates to contagious or severe diseases accompanying migrants or refugees en route from refugee countries, or to refuge countries, the countries that they're actually trying to enter into. Two remaining past houses are the 9th and 12th. They're empty with rulers in the two previous past houses, so any themes associated with the 9th and 12th deflect automatically to the 3rd and 6th, respectively. Concluding 2018 remnant themes: overall health and wellness, including medical care and disease. There's an inflation, potential financial bubble that will happen with the healthcare establishment, specifically in the United States. I don't know how that's going in all the other countries, but in the United States primarily is what I'm concerned about. So these are major highlights that will continue throughout 2019 and the new year, as well as the feuds surrounding foreign conflicts, refugee crisis situations, etc. These will be year-long themes, yet again, for the duration of 2019. Once Jupiter transits into Capricorn, there will be a shift in the open borders ideology, whether it's the citizens themselves rejecting it or there being more of a nationalistic kind of perspective. Once there is the stellium with Saturn, Jupiter, and Pluto on Capricorn, it's going to be a very conservative Saturnian mindset collectively. This translates also to deadly aggressive influenza season, with fatal cases happening all the way up until spring and early summer. The ongoing feud about how to tackle the humanitarian crisis, quote unquote, will begin to escalate from country to country, citizen to refugee. It's already ramping up substantially in Europe, obviously. Immediate transit trends for 2019. After examining the past houses to elaborate on how the recent and past events are influencing the present time, we look at the houses representing the present. That would be the 1st, 4th, 7th, and 10th houses. First house has Pallas in it. Its ruling sign of Libra. Pallas represents justice, conflict, intelligence. This represents the self or collective selves, quote unquote, from a mundane perspective. Current aspects to Saturn, Uranus, and Eris in the North Node. All of these points are in the other now houses, which would be the 4th, 7th, and 10th. It just... Where did it just go? Current Saturn, Uranus. Oh yeah, the now houses, and it describes the scenario of self-enduring the self-enduring conflict with authorities or abusing their power. 4th house has a stellium with the Sun, Saturn, Pluto in the South Node. Pluto and Saturn are both direct during this time, indicating said authorities or elites, quote unquote, like George Soros and those sorts of people, abusing said power are being proactive right now. So they're actually engaging in planning and strategizing on how to do whatever they're planning, and actively fighting against the selves, quote unquote, best interest, the citizens, or the average Joe. Again, this is obvious trends with the EU, the UN, disgruntled citizens revolting against political world leaders, etc. This will be a year-long theme yet again. 7th house has a conjunction with Eris and Uranus. Uranus is still hanging on its last few degrees of Aries. An Eris-Uranus conjunction represents rebelliousness, revolutionary individual, or mentality. The 7th house also represents Libra and others, which echoes Pallas in Libra in the 1st house. This spells a revolutionary movement of the people versus the government or the elite on a global scale. The 10th house, ruled by Saturn, has a stellium of the North Node in Cancer, along with Hades and Earth, representing that this ongoing feud is it's supposed to be synchronistic. I don't know why autocorrect did that. Synchronistic necessary event of the Pluto and Capricorn generational themes. 2019 trends outlook. The past and present themes most of us should be aware of by now. So let's examine the future houses, which reveal what will conclude for this year, what will manifest from now until 2020. The future houses are represented by 2nd, 5th, 8th, and 11th. 2nd house is attributed to financial assets and personal resources. And with Venus, the Moon, and Ceres in Scorpio, it represents a few different things. I'm just going to focus on mainly mundane and sociological. It could represent an upheaval in resources, economic depression, or financial instability. Typically with the Moon and Scorpio in the 2nd house, that can represent some sort of financial loss overall, which to many astrologers familiar with their history, the synchronistic event of the Great Depression is overdue, with Uranus and Taurus being a major generational factor with the Great Depression and the struggling financially wise in the 1930s. I suspect when Jupiter enters Capricorn, that the actual crash will happen, or the effects of an economic recession will become evident to the majority. It won't just be in the United States, it'll be actually a global crash. 2019 transit outlook continued. The 5th house has Vesta and Black Moon, Lilith, and Aquarius. Aquarius is associated with the trauma signature, so the self's freedom, happiness, and leisure will be in jeopardy, primarily due to the organizations or sociological institutions which control regulations, aka this goes back to the authorities and government abusing their powers. It also suggests, for you conspiracy enthusiasts out there, that the stock market or economic recession is a calculated, orchestrated event. Some people, Trump is, speaking out against the Federal Reserve. Fascinating that they continue to up the percentage throughout his, successful comeback of the actual economy. Some people are speculating that it's because they're trying to actually unravel what he's been doing, which many people will become, many people will become aware of eventually, assuming they aren't already. That's where Vesta comes into play. 8th house has Juno and Taurus. This is in opposition with the stellium and Scorpio, obviously, in the 2nd, and it represents that countries, nations, or its people will find ways to survive without the institution's involvement, either by choice or necessity. It's the silver lining in this potential tragic scenario that will destabilize many people financially. 11th house is another emphasis similar to the North Node in Cancer in the 10th house. Important, inevitable transformation with sociological structures, agreements, institutions is changing. This placement signifies a lot of inevitable end and destruction of the Pluto and Capricorn transit themes. Obviously, Pluto and Capricorn takes a long time. This is a huge, proactive year for the unraveling going on. So the keyword for 2019 is major purging. It will still take a few years for everything to unravel to its core, but it's definitely the beginning of the demolition process. And I think, is that my whole thing? Yep, that's it.